We're in week 3 of our How to Build an Incredible Family series. And suddenly, our incredible family, they don't look so incredible, do they? But they're superheroes. What could possibly go wrong? You know, the problem is eventually, even though they are superheroes, they take off their spandex outfits and their little masks. And you know what they are? They're people. They're people with problems. And as you watch that clip, you know what? That very loud discussion sounds vaguely familiar. I mean, maybe not that specifics. I mean, it's not like I've ever burnt down a building before, at least not since I've been married. But the idea that there is a family discussion going on and you understand, especially if you're parents, mom and dad, they're just not on the same page as far as what it means to build a family. They're both struggling with some decisions that they have to make. I mean, Helen, that's mom, is just trying to get by, dealing with the hand that they've been dealt, trying to hold her family together. Her logic is, let's just forget about the past and move on. Let's not make waves, let's just blend in. Of course, you know what that means, right? It means her family is ultimately going to have to deny who they are to become normal. And then you've got Bob, and well, Bob's on the other end of the spectrum because Bob wants to live the good old days. They called them the glory days, and these were the days when Bob was Mr. Incredible. He was a hero. And he desires to hang on to that past, but the unfortunate thing is hanging on to the past, he's making some bad choices. He has seemed to have forgotten that the choices that he makes no longer just impacts him, it impacts his wife and his kids. And he needs to remember the very opening line from Helen at the wedding. To do this job, you're going to have to be more than Mr. Incredible. Decisions. Did you know that the average adult makes 35,000 choices each day? No wonder I'm so exhausted. That's a lot of decisions to make in one day. Now, most of these decisions, they're insignificant, and we make them without a ton of thought. I'm sure nobody woke up this morning and had a mental breakdown over whether or not you use Colgate or Crest toothpaste. But that was a choice. You probably, when you walked out, you didn't sit there and say, I wonder which car I want to drive this morning. No, you just went to the car that best suit that moment, and you got in, but you understand. Those are all choices. We just don't ever think about we're making a choice. Many of them, well, they're mid-level decisions, and they may require some thought, but in the realm of reality, it's not that important. I mean, seriously, does it matter whether or not I have chicken tonight for dinner and pork chop tomorrow night, or pork chop tonight and chicken tomorrow night? It doesn't matter, but I do have to give some thought to it. I got to think about how much time do I have to fix dinner, who's going to be at dinner, how much do I have to have. So I got to give some thought into it, but really in the realm of things, chicken, pork chop, hamburger, it's food. I don't have to put a lot of thought into it. It's not going to change my world depending on what I have. However, some decisions, well, they're critical decisions, and we have to make them in that moment. Don't have time to think about it. Don't have time to rationalize about it. Don't have time to weigh the pros and cons. I just have to make a decision because I'm at that moment, and it's time. And if I don't make a decision, well, there's going to be some consequences I have to deal with. But did you know, not my statistics, you can go look this up online for yourself, you can go Google it, that the average person makes 4 life-altering decisions every single day. Really? Yeah. That's what they say, at least 4. That's the average. Sometimes you make more, sometimes you make less. But on average, you make 4 life-altering decisions every single day. So that would add up to 28 decisions you make every single week that will change your life in the future. That means you've made 1,460 decisions every single year that will change your life. And you know what? These are decisions that will change everything. It may change where your family lives. It may change how your family grows up. It may change what your family looks like. All because of a decision you made. And then the real ironic thing is you may not realize it was a life-altering decision until years down the road. Folks, you talk about a universe, the multiverse of madness. That's where we live. Decisions, decisions, decisions. And then I come to church and somebody stands up and says, add God to your decisions. You knew we were going to be here, right? Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Yeah, we say amen. Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. Serve God. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'd love to tell you that makes things easier. It doesn't. Adding God to your equation, well, it actually makes things more complicated for you. You see, when you add God to your equation, you have to remember God gave you free will. And that allows you to make decisions, even those that will lead you away from God. And God will let you make them. So now I'm in this situation where I'm trying to make decisions and I'm trying to include God. And this is one of the reasons I hate the phrase. And so I said, well, God just made me that way. God never made you anyway except for in his image. And then he gave you free will and said, hey, guess what? I'm going to let you make the choices on how your life turns out. And you know what? That decision to include God, the fact is, it's another decision. It's a choice you have to make. You get it, right? You can go through your entire life and never consider God, and you may live a long, happy life. You may not, but you may. You never really have to consider God unless you choose to consider God. God's not going to force you to consider his ways. And then the real interesting thing is when you choose to do so, it's absolutely a life-altering decision. Because God has a different perspective than you do. When God looks at life, he's looking at a great big picture. And let's face it, you know what I'm usually looking at? How do I get from the moment I got out the bed until the moment I go to bed without my life falling apart? That's my focal point. Sometimes I'm having a really good day, and I'll consider a few days in advance. Some days I'm having a really, really good day, and I'm talking about a whole week. We've given up on 5-year plans because they never work anyway, because there's just too many variables to figure out. But you get the idea. When I say, God, I'm going to put you in the middle of my decision-making process, God has a different perspective. If you would have told me 10 years, 20 years ago, I guess it'd be 20 years ago, that I would be standing up here doing preaching, I'd have told you crazy. I was not exactly what you considered mainstream back then. They thought I was crazy as a youth minister. Let's face it. Let me into a pulpit? Are you crazy? Here we are. It's all about decisions. And that's important because sometimes when you include God in your decisions, he may take you in a direction you never intended to go. Genesis chapter 2, verse 1, we meet a guy named Abram at that point. And, well, the Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your people, your father's household to a land I will show you. So here's Abram, and he's there, and he's minding his own business, and he's got all of his family around, and he's thinking about how he's going to go about raising his family. He doesn't have any kids, so he's thinking about who's going to get his possessions. And God comes to him and says, hey, Abram, road trip. Where are we going, God? You just start walking. I'll let you know when to turn right or left and when to stop. I sure am glad God's never asked me to do something like that. Yeah, he has all the time. Yeah, we'll let you know the ending when you get there. But I have to give you a warning label about all this decision-making process. It applies to all levels. So when you start making decisions, this is not just about family. This is a family-based series about how to be an incredible family. But if you are a household of one, or you are living by yourself, you understand making decisions impacts you also. If you're a family in whatever configuration we come in these days, sometimes it's mom and dad and kids, and sometimes it's just mom and kids, and sometimes it's just dad and kids, and sometimes it's grandparents. They come in all shapes, sizes, and forms these days. You have to remember your decision-making impacts your entire family. And well, when it comes to the church, I told you this kind of brings the family of God into all of this too. You know your decision-making impacts the people in your church, whether you know it or not. Man, that's exhausting. So I'm supposed to take into account all of that? Yeah, you thought making decisions was easy? No. Making incredible decisions is not incredibly easy. In fact, it's incredibly hard. See, that's going to be the difference between the sermon I'm going to do this morning and going out to Amazon and buying a self-help book about making decisions. If you go to Amazon and you buy yourself a self-help book and it delivers to your house with a little smile on the box, and you open and you sit down and read it, you know what those books are all about? How to reduce your stress in decision-making. How many of those you got? Probably bunches. You know why? Because it can't be done. You can't reduce stress in decision-making because decisions, especially those critical and life-altering ones, they're complicated. And making an incredible decision isn't going to be incredibly easy. As a matter of fact, it's going to be very difficult for you to do. And in case you're wondering, making an incredible decision is not always going to be incredibly popular. You know, this could have been the entire topic for this sermon. And I'd like to tell you that it's not going to be that complicated and it's not going to make you that unpopular, but you know what? It is. It's going to be incredibly hard. You see, we as a people, we are now at the point in our reality that we bow to the polls of public opinion. We read it on Facebook, we read it on Twitter, we see where the trending is going, and man, we are a bandwagon society. We want to jump on and let's go with the current ebb and flow of society. And I know as a church, we say never. We would never, ever, 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 ever take that kind of approach. But I want you to think about it. How many times in the church have we allowed the membership, quote unquote, to decide which way we should go, even though the leadership thinks, well, this is what's best for the body? That's kind of hard, isn't it? How many times in our church have we allowed high-volume, squeaky wheel people to drown out God's vision for the church? It won't make us popular. But rest assured, it will be incredibly unpopular with the world. This is what it says in John chapter 15, verse 19. If you belong to the world, it would love you, and if it would love, try that again. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. In the world, not of the world. Man, forget about a sermon. That would make an entire series of sermons that we could put together. 2023 is just around the corner. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I know where we're headed. But for today, instead of chasing my rabbit down the trail and keeping you here all afternoon, how about we just get back to how to make our incredible decisions for ourselves and for our family. And we're going to do this God style. How do I go about making the godly decisions in my life? So now everybody should be interested because guess what? You have about probably 25,000 more to go today. All right? you probably aren't even halfway through what you have to decide for the day. So this is going to be very relevant as you walk out the door today. And so when it comes to these incredible decisions, the first step is seek incredible advice. Isn't it amazing? You are not designed to make these decisions alone. Where have we heard this before? Oh, all the way back at the beginning of the year when we were talking about our soul. You're not supposed to do this alone. So this is what I want to do. Instead of me giving you advice, which may or may not be good advice, this morning, if you're filling in blanks in your bulletin, put your pens down for a moment. Give me your attention. Look up here. And I just want you to listen to some advice about receiving advice. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and let the one who understands obtain guidance. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 13. Keep hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. Where there is no guidance, a people fall, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety, and sometimes sanity. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 15. The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but the wise may listen to advice. Proverbs chapter 13:10. By insolence comes nothing but strife, but those who take advice is wisdom. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 22. Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. Proverbs chapter 19, verses 20 through 21. Listen to the advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. Many are the plans of the mind of a man, but the purpose of the Lord will stand. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 18. Plans are established by seeking advice, so if you wage war, obtain guidance. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 6. For by wise guidance you can wage war, in abundance of counsel there is victory. Proverbs 28:26. Whoever trusts his own mind is a fool, but he who walks in wisdom will be delivered. And it's not just about listening to man's advice. You got to throw God in there at some point. If you're going to include him into your decision making, you got to listen to his advice. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 7. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and turn from your ways. You know what makes these verses stand out? It's because they came from Proverbs. And well, Proverbs states the purpose of what the writer wants you to do. Remember, this is King Solomon writing, the son of David, and this is how he identifies this book. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. This was written for teenagers and young people. Okay. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. Let the discerning get guidance for understanding proverbs and parables and sayings and riddles of the wise. The book of Proverbs was a book of advice. And isn't it funny that he gives a lot of advice about how to go about accepting advice? Because let's face it, we are a people, we don't like to listen. We like to figure it out on the go. Yeah, take it one step at a time. Who needs a plan? Yeah, we'll just kind of make things go as they go. But here we are, and we're looking at Solomon. And the other thing I need you to know about Solomon is he wrote this great book of advice, but he wasn't great at following his own advice. Go read the book of Ecclesiastes, and you'll find out that Solomon made some very dumb decisions in his life that cost him a lot. And so the good point to this is there's a big difference between knowing the right thing to do and doing the right thing. I can take all the advice I want, but if I don't take the advice and start to put it into some practice, what good is it, right? All I am is smart. I can go get a job on Jeopardy, right? It's not going to do my life any good. So if you're here today, and this is more to parents right now, everybody else, don't tune me out, but this is more to parents. Just so you know, there are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. So that means if you decided to sit down with your family and you started reading through Proverbs, it would take you about a month to get all the way through it. And if you did, it would take you less time than it would take you to read, to watch a 30-minute Disney program. Okay? So that means you have a choice. What are you building your family on? Would you be willing to take 20, 30 minutes to sit down and read a proverb at night and discuss it with your kids? By the way, there are some really dicey subjects in there. Okay, they're going to cover everything and some things that might actually make you blush talking to your kids about it. But which is the better use of your 30 minutes? Read God's Word and discuss it with your kids? Turn on the TV and watch a television show. You get it, right? It's a choice. How you train your kids is a choice. So I encourage you, maybe take 31 days and set it aside and maybe skip an episode here or there. And they live stream anyway. You can catch them later, okay? Skip an episode here and there. And how about trying God's way? But just so you know, it isn't just about receiving advice. Incredible decisions take some incredible patience. This is what it says in Psalms chapter 27, verse 14. Wait for the Lord, be strong, let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. My granny always told me Rome wasn't built in a day, but she burned in the night. Folks, sometimes you just have to learn how to wait and be patient. And yeah, I'm not very good at this, okay? But I also know Solomon wasn't very good at this either. As a matter of fact, when you go to Ecclesiastes, you find out the end of the matter is better than the beginning, and patience is better than pride. Old man Solomon, when he was about to depart from this world, he finally got it, right? The pride of life is do things in a rapid motion. The patience of life, yeah, that's the important thing. That's what it takes to do godly advice. Solomon acknowledges in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 29, whoever is patient, having great understanding, but the one who is quick-tempered displays folly. Proverbs 15, 18, a hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. Proverbs 16:32 tells us, better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one that takes a city. I used to have a friend that told me all the time, there is a very thin difference between Satan's mine shaft and God's open door. Patience is the only way that you'll ever be able to tell them apart. Because if you go rushing in and think, here's God's open door, you may find out there's nothing there but a mine shaft for you to fall down. Wait. Doesn't even the world have this common sense? Look before you leap is what they told me when I was a kid. I jumped off the bus anyway. Okay, but look before you leap. Don't just charge in full blazes. And not only does it take incredible advice and incredible patience, especially in your family. My kids might actually get a laugh at this point. If you're going to make incredible decisions, you have to have incredible compassion. James chapter 3, verse 17, but the wisdom from above is first pure and peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And I don't mind telling you this. This is one I'm working on. Remember, you're dealing with the guy that scored a 2 on the mercy test. I'm at times not a very compassionate person. I'm not. But I'm working on it. And sometimes I have made some decisions that have not been very compassionate toward my family. Kind of like Bob out there knocking buildings down, living the good old days. And maybe you're asking yourself, well, what does compassion have to do with my decision making? Let me tell you. Everything. You see, incredible decisions are not just about choice. They are about they consider the other people around you. You don't just make a decision and then look at people and say, well, you work it out. This is what I want to do, and then you wait for everybody else to catch up with you. You can't do it that way. At least not if it's an incredible decision. See, that's not the way. It just can't be about you. I'm sorry, my head doesn't expand like hers. Okay, but you can't just make your decisions about what's good for you, what I want to do. I mean, isn't that Bob's problem? Isn't that what he's struggling with? He just wants to go out and be the hero. And then he gets home and his family gets uprooted again because he did something he shouldn't. He never stopped to think about the fact that it affects his wife, his kids, their future. And the wife tells him, look at the big picture, Bob. Because incredible decisions are more than just incredible thoughts. They hinge on incredible thoughtfulness. That's a cool statement. I wish I had written it all by myself. I added the incredible pieces around it to make it fit with the sermon series. But just think about it. Having a good thought doesn't make it a good decision until I factor in all of the people that my life impacts. And then not only will it make it a good decision because it's got good information, it'll make it a good decision because it gave some thought to it. I can't just forge ahead because it looked good. It fits my need. And then lastly, our incredible decisions means that we have to show some incredible discipline. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. We're back where we began. I hope you kept all your hands and limbs inside the car as we were moving. But it's an important verse for us to look at because we hear that and we're saying, yeah, you're right. This is how, let's do that. You know what? Who that makes us like? It makes us just like the people that originally heard these verses. Because Joshua stated that. And then when we got down to verse 16, this is what the people said. Then the people answered, far be it from us to forsake the Lord and serve other gods. So Joshua began to push on them a little more and say, you do realize what I'm telling you, right? You understand what I'm talking about in your decision-making process. And then they began to push them. They got down to verse 21, and they said, hey, Joshua, no, we will serve the Lord. Notice the exclamation point. Yeah, we're all for this, Joshua. And Joshua continued to push them. Folks, there are some things you're going to have to consider for your life. Things that are going to impact your life. Things that are going to change in your life. If you decide to do this, and well, they got to verse 24. And the people said to Joshua, we will serve the Lord our God and obey him. And then they went out and built themselves a little statue to remind themselves what they're supposed to be doing. That's what they did. And then we turn the pages just a few chapters and we see that there's an incredible problem. Judges chapter 2, verses 10 through 13. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, they died. That's just a fancy way of saying it. They died. Gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals and forsook the Lord and the God of their ancestors who brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshiped various gods of people around them. They aroused the Lord's anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Asherites. You see what happened? The generation that was standing there with Joshua got all whipped up into a frenzy and they said, yeah, we're going to serve God. God for me. And they began making incredible decisions for themselves based on God, but they forgot one very important fact. You can make all the good decisions you want, but the incredible decisions are the ones you can live with and pass on. Did you catch that in Judges? The generation that was standing there with Joshua, they did fine. They stayed on the straight and narrow. They kept their commitment. They probably went by the statue and patted on the head once a day and said, I remember the commitment I made and I'm going to live for God. But the generation after them had not a clue what it meant to make a decision and consider God. And let me ask you, why? because they got so busy making decisions, they forgot the advice part. They got so busy making decisions, they forgot to be patient. They got so busy making their decisions, they forgot to be compassionate to that next generation. And they took that generation and they left them bankrupt in their decision-making ability. And I could just hear the conversation around the dinner table now. This generation, they don't know what it means to follow God. Of course they don't. You never took the time to tell them. It says they grew up and they didn't know who God was because you didn't have time. You were too busy making decisions. And you never taught them how to make a decision in a godly fashion. That's what it's about. Make an incredible decision. I'm going to leave you this morning in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19. Pencil this one down. You can go home and read it a few times this week. I promise you, you will see this verse again if you come back next week. This day I call the heavens and the earth and the witnesses against you. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. You get that's what this is all about, right? A lot of times today we have weird perceptions of what a family is. Families do not look the way they looked when I grew up. They've changed. You know what? People that looked at my generation probably said, well, those families, they've changed from the generation before me. And you know what? They're going to continue to change. They just will. But here's the one thing that doesn't change through the years. If you are looking for incredible choices, incredible results, you have to choose God. You have to make the decision like all of the people that were standing on that hillside that day, and when Joshua called them to rally around God, they said, we will do it. But then you have to do one better. Don't just do it for yourself. Show some compassion to your kids. Teach your kids what it means to make godly, good decisions for themselves and their family into the future. And teach them to pass it on to the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. And then you understand what it means to be an incredible family making incredible decisions